Subscribe to our channel by clicking the subscribe button. Click the bell button and enjoy the latest uploads from our channel.
Talking about cancer, talking about medical marijuana. You know, we had a medical marijuana TV ad that was also banned from the Super Bowl. And this was a year ago when CBS was covering it. You know, talked about how, yeah, isn't that interesting? You know, we can have a heartwarming ad about a dog whose life was saved by some vets. The CEO of WeatherTech spends $6 million to run that ad. Say, hey, if you want to donate to these people who did a great thing, saved my dog, and they're saving other dogs' lives, great. But if you want to try to save the lives of humans, we don't want to hear, said Fox News and the NFL, we don't want to hear from 14 people who survived an abortion because their lives don't matter. They don't give them as much respect as they do a dog. Isn't that amazing? And it was a year ago that we had a medical marijuana TV ad that was banned from the Super Bowl by CBS. I'm going to run that ad for you. And I'm going to talk about another high-profile celebrity besides Rush who had cancer and attributes her turnaround to the use of marijuana as medicine. You know, there's a lot of very natural, safe, and effective products out there that they hope that you don't use. They want to sell you very expensive, very ineffective products. I mean, I continue to look at this, and I tweeted it out. Libertarian is my Twitter account. You'll have to look hard to find it, and once you do, subscribe. They will not tell you when I tweet. They even banned my wife, unfollowed me from her account after they tried to convince her to turn off notifications from me, after they tried to convince her to follow AOC. They eventually unfollowed her from me. So that's Twitter. But again, for whoever sees it, I retweeted something somebody put up. It was a vaping store, and they'd closed down. I said, we'd almost put big tobacco out of business, and then the government got involved. And that's right. It's a shame, isn't it? And that's really what's going on with our healthcare as well. I mean, it's not just vaping. I don't care what your opinion is about vaping, whether you think it's a good thing or you think it's a bad thing. The bottom line is it ain't the government's business. It's not their business. None of their business. They don't have the authority to do this on the 9th and 10th Amendment. And yet the same people, the FDA, who did that, are also telling you, and this is what I retweeted that with my comment about stem cells. They're telling you not just that you can't use vaping, because some people might look at that and say, well, no, you could have some pretty harmful stuff that you could vape, and I don't think maybe that, we ought to protect people from that for their own good. There's that sign there. We ought to protect people for their own good, just like, Mike Bloomberg wants to protect you from soda pop, and he'll steal your money to do it. Because that's really all that's happening. I don't think it's really cut down on people's use of soda pop. You know, probably what they've got now is an underground market of people shipping in Coke and Pepsi from New Jersey, just like they do cigarettes, Lucy's. Of course, I guess you could also probably get strangled by one of Bloomberg's finest if you're selling individual cans of soda on the street, like they did Eric Garner for selling Lucy's individual cigarettes. Nevertheless, when we look at stem cells, right, we can all say, well, too much Coke and soda is bad for you, and maybe any of it is bad for you. Okay, maybe all of tobacco is bad for you. Maybe all of vaping is bad for you. But we're talking about a situation where, with stem cells, using your own stem cells, this is something that the FDA has never claimed that they had authority over. Taking something out of your body, doing something to it, and putting it back in. We've had, for the longest time, we've had in vitro fertilization, where you take egg and sperm from a couple, you fertilize them in glass, and then you implant it back into the woman. That is a much more complicated procedure than what's involved in using your own stem cells. You remove some fat from your stomach. You put it in a centrifuge. You take those stem cells, you culture them, and put them back in the person that they came from. And the FDA wants to claim that it has authority to stop that? And the bottom line is that we've had thousands of people who've done this. We've not had any serious problems with any of it. And we've had 80% cure of some very serious chronic diseases, whether it's autism or autoimmune, or whether it is, many other illnesses. It's a long list. I talked to Kristen Camella, U.S. Stem Cells. They've shut that down. They have destroyed and confiscated and destroyed stem cells that my family had stored our own stem cells. I cannot get over the outrage of this, and it is done simply for money because big pharmaceutical companies want to be able to patent stem cell treatment. That stem cells that they've taken from aborted fetuses, from aborted babies. The level of criminality involved in the federal government is beyond description. When I look at this kind of stuff, it makes me want to throw up. Makes me want to throw up. I was just talking about Olivia Newton-John, saying that she had her third bout of breast cancer. It was stage 4. It had metastasized to other parts of her body, to her lower back and so forth. She was in extreme pain, could not sleep. She said, however, this time, unlike the other 2 times, this time she says, I'm feeling great. The tumors seem to be receding, and she's been using cannabis and natural remedies, she said. Now, a year ago, when the Super Bowl was carried by CBS, you had a group that wanted to run an ad talking about medical marijuana, and they were told that they could not run that ad by CBS. I want to play that ad for you right now. That's video clip number 11, the ad that CBS would not run.
Austin would have dozens to hundreds of seizures every single day. None of the prescriptions would work. One pill almost killed our son.
I've had 3 back surgeries, and I was on opioids for 15 years. It was a very dark, very depressive time in my life.
After my injury, I felt like I couldn't live with the pain, but I couldn't live with this treatment long term. It was unbearable.
I don't have to live like that anymore. Medical cannabis saved Austin's life.
Cannabis has given me my life back.
There are families in other states having to watch their children die.
I want to see my brothers and sisters who sacrificed so much for this country have access to the safest treatment possible. This really is an injustice.
It's not just unfair, it's cruel.
That's right. Now, why do you think that CBS would not run that? It wouldn't have anything to do with all the money that big pharmaceutical companies spend running ads on CBS and Fox News and CNN and MSNBC and so forth, right? Would it? That wouldn't have anything at all to do with the fact that nobody complains about the horrible side effects, the horrible costs of what they do. As a matter of fact, they raised a lot of issues when President Trump said, we're going to require, this hasn't gone into effect yet, I don't believe. I don't watch that much television to know. But we're going to require that if your drug that you're advertising costs more than, I think the amount was like $500 a month to use, that you're going to have to list that price, how much it costs. Because some of these drugs that they use to treat chronic conditions that aren't going to go away, they're just treating the symptoms. Some of those drugs cost $10,000 a month for some of the autoimmune drugs, for example. And people need to know that. They should also know, and I imagine maybe they do mention it real rapidly in those disclaimers, that some of those drugs will also give you cancer. That's one of the side effects. It's amazing to me to watch these drug commercials and to hear when they start listing off the side effects that many times one of the side effects is to exacerbate what you're taking it for. Whatever the problem is, it makes it worse. And then it has all these other side effects that are there. But again, that was banned by CBS last year because they don't want you to know about safe and effective natural treatment. That very first profile that they had there, they had 3 different people. First one was a boy who'd had hundreds of seizures a day. 1 dose of the medication just about killed him. We had here in Texas an exception, even though we still have marijuana as a Class 1 drug here in Texas, which basically says, according to the UN, to the federal government, and to the state of Texas, says that marijuana doesn't have any medical uses. That's what a Class 1 drug is. And we all know that that's a lie. Of course, the entire war on drugs is a lie. It's coming to us from the UN. But it's kind of odd to me. I'm glad that it happened, but they carved out an exception for people who are having uncontrollable seizures. Here in Texas, where they don't allow you to have medical marijuana for anything else. That's a very well-known example there. And eventually, we're going to crack that hard-headed corruption We'll talk more about this when we come back. Stay with us. I just played for you as we were talking about ads that are allowed by mainstream media and by the NFL, and ads that are not allowed by them. You're allowed to celebrate the salvation of a dog's life. You're not allowed to celebrate the salvation of 14 people who survived abortion. You're not allowed to have that. You're allowed to see ads about other kinds of medication, but you're not allowed to see ads about medical marijuana. That was banned a year ago by CBS from that Super Bowl. I played that ad for you. They had 3 people, a boy who had survived hundreds of seizures a day. No traditional medication had helped him, and as I pointed out, they have a very tiny exception carved out of the law here in Texas that allows you to use medical marijuana to control seizures. You know, the irony of this is that many of these people who have uncontrollable seizures, it's a result of an adverse reaction to a vaccine. And big pharmaceutical companies don't want you to have access to natural medical marijuana that would stop the adverse reactions to their mandated, soon to be mandated, in many cases already mandated vaccine. The second one was a man who had been addicted to opioids. And of course, medical marijuana can get you off of opioid addiction, and it can help you with the pain without becoming addictive. And then finally, a veteran who was in severe pain after his leg was amputated. So he could ameliorate the pain without getting addicted to opioids. All of them said that medical marijuana made life livable. And so the point of the ad was to push for legalization of medical marijuana at the federal level. Well, here's where we need to wake up. I talk about medical marijuana. I think that people ought to be able to have any kind of natural medicine that's available out there. The government doesn't have the authority to tell us what medication we can have. They do not have the authority to mandate, without our informed consent, what medication we must have. If you accept either of those principles, if you accept that the government can force you to take medication, which is what we're talking about with these vaccine mandates and so forth, if you accept that, then the government can withhold safe and effective medication to give you dangerous, ineffective, and expensive medication from big pharmaceutical companies. So you either have human rights or you are a slave of government and corporations. Take your pick. And we don't have to hope that we're going to have some Supreme Court justices who pay attention to the Constitution, or hope that we get a president who's going to somehow appoint judges out of this pool of bureaucrats that we're allowed to choose from, that are going to be reliable and support the Constitution. We don't have to do that. We can do it on our own. That's the message of medical marijuana, and state after state where we have had referendums. And folks, that can also apply to other issues of life. That can apply to abortion. We don't have to beg the Supreme Court to allow us to stop people from killing babies. We don't have to ask them. They don't have the authority. They don't have the authority to define what marriage is, regardless of what you think about marriage. Do your own thing. Do it at the local level. Cut these people off. Get Washington out of your life. Come on. I don't want their approval. I don't need their approval. And you don't either. And medical marijuana shows us that. Yeah, we can lobby people. We can, try to explain to people why you would want to have it. But I don't care what Washington says. Even Jeff Sessions knows that he doesn't have the authority to enforce a ban on medical marijuana. That's why he did nothing. If he had tried to do something, it would have shown that the emperor has no clothes. Because I guarantee you, with the broad public support of medical marijuana, people would have brought up the 9th and 10th Amendment, and it would have blown not only the war on drugs, but it would have blown gun control laws. It would have blown out all the stuff about abortion and marriage, you name it. So many different virtually everything that the federal government does, they have no authority for it. They've got a lot of force that they can use, but they don't have much authority. They are a paper tiger that we allow to rule us out of our passivity, our supine cowering before them, and our ignorance. And we need to stop that. And medical marijuana shows you this. We've had 2/3 of the states have basically nullified federal overreach on marijuana. They've said, not here, not here. And Jeff Sessions was the poster child to tell you, that's right. I ain't got no authority to do that, and I hope people don't vote for him in Alabama. Why I had Roy Moore on. Vote for somebody. Roy Moore was the only person in the forum of Republicans running for Senate, the only one who, when they asked about medical marijuana, because that is a popular issue, that is going to be a losing issue for any of these Republican candidates who get it, especially Jeff Sessions. It's a key issue because he talked so much about it and was afraid to do anything about it. And Doug Jones, a Democrat, has taken that on because that's one of the few things that he's got on his side. Most people don't want to lock people up for life for using a plant to treat themselves. I mean, that is the absurd situation that's here. But only Roy Moore, out of the Republicans, had the respect for the Constitution and the backbone to say, I don't agree with it, but we don't have any constitutional authority to ban it. We got to get back to the Constitution because it's destroying our country. And he's absolutely right. That's why I had him on. People need to hear that the government doesn't have authority to dictate all these things to them. Yeah, one more thing. Judicial supremacy must be destroyed. Federal supremacy must be destroyed. It was never the intention. It's a bad idea, and there's no authority for it. It's not legal. It's not constitutional. And so the point of the ad was to push for legalization of medical marijuana on the federal level. Here's the point of what we've seen over the last few years. The point is that you can change the federal government without having a violent revolution. I had Richard Proctor on last week. We talked about, well, can these Virginia counties secede from Virginia and join West Virginia? Well, to do that legally, they have to have the permission of both state legislatures in Virginia and West Virginia and permission of the federal government, the Congress, to do that. That ain't going to happen.